probably going to speak a lot from my own personal experience. It's good to know that there's no one size fits all for transgender experience. So just because maybe your child or you yourself don't fit into these kind of these commonly held beliefs, that doesn't mean that your child isn't trans or non-binary, that you're not trans or non-binary. It just means that you're a different flavor. So yeah, generally, I mean, I've heard of transgender, non-binary children questioning their gender from as young as about 3 years old. You often, when we're talking about children questioning their gender identity, we're not talking about, you know, a girl who wants to play football or a boy who wants to play with dollies. You know, we're talking about someone who is persistently, consistently, and insisting that they are a different gender than they were assigned with at birth. We often find that with trans children, we find that they are saying things like, you know, it's not that it's almost that they don't understand what is going on or why they're being classed as one gender when they clearly feel another. So you might get a trans girl, so someone who is assigned male at birth, wondering why she has to stand up to pee when she knows her sisters can sit down to pee. It could be a young trans man wondering why he gets, when you're lining up for school assembly, why he has to be on the other side with the girls, when clearly he should definitely be on that side. That feels more accurate. So we do get trans children saying things like, but I'm not a boy, or I'm a girl. And it's not just when we talk about trans children, people bring out that tired joke that's like, well, my 4-year-old told me he was a train today, so does that mean he's transgender or whatever? And no, it's not just a once-off. Like, kids love to explore and play and figure out where their place is in life. But when it comes to trans children questioning their gender, it is consistent, insistent, and persistent. It is a frequent thing that is happening, and sometimes the severity of it can kind of come to a head as well. So often it's trans children, like, can be as young as 3 years old, and that's probably because gender is a much more foundational aspect of who we are. We like to think that, you know, in 2020, we're kind of post-gender, and that, you know, you can be anyone you want to be, regardless if you're born a boy or a girl. But the reality is very much different. We still give little boys train sets and building blocks and doctor's outfits, and we give girls dollies and makeups and Barbies. And so kids are aware of this big split between what is expected of them and what they actually feel. So you often find that with trans children, they might bring this up to somebody, that they don't feel like the gender that they were assigned with at birth. Mommy, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. And that the response that they get from their parents or their family or even their friends or teachers might be one of disgust. It could be one that's, you know, mocking or mean. And very, very quickly, children pick up on this so quickly, and they realize that they've said something that's embarrassing or shameful or disgusting or dirty or whatever. And they learn to push those feelings down, to repress them, to avoid getting that shameful correction ever again. I like, if people here are kind of more familiar with LGB experiences, I would say it's very familiar to how some of our gay friends are very, very camp, and have been very camp since they were wee boys. And their dads will say, stop acting like that, stop acting like a fairy, stop being so girly. And it's so embarrassing and shameful that they try really hard to not be camp, and they know that it's something that is not okay for them to be. And that's the same thing with trans children as well. It is a common misconception that to be transgender or non-binary, you've had to have always known, that you've always had to have questioned or challenged the gender that you were assigned with at birth. And in all honesty, most of the trans and non-binary people that I know of probably couldn't put their finger out to say, I definitely questioned my gender when I was a child. And when I was figuring out that I was trans, I often looked to my past and my childhood and was like, I don't think I mean, I was a tomboy, definitely. But did I question my gender? I'm not certain. And that actually put up a bit of a barrier for me, because I thought, well, if I didn't always know, if I haven't always believed that I was not a boy, then am I actually trans? Spoiler, I am trans. I can be trans. And I think what's really funny about my experience is that I often thought that there was nothing in my childhood that would have linked to me being trans now. But in the many years I spent kind of evaluating and reevaluating my relationship to gender identity, a lot of memories kind of came back to the fold, including one where I was about 5 years old, sitting on the bed with my sister and my mum and just saying straight out, I'm a boy. Just, matter of fact, I'm a boy. And my sister pisses herself laughing. She thinks it's the funniest thing she's ever heard. She's like, boys have penises. Boys have penises. And I remember now the humiliation. I felt like I was so ashamed. And that was probably enough for me to push it down for many a decade. So yeah, it is common enough for children to question their gender identity, and it is pretty known that trans people do question their gender identity in childhood. But that is not always the case. You can be trans and just have figured it out yourself. So yeah.
Thanks, Leo. I just want to recap on the introduction because, of course, I wasn't recording.
Okay.
So I am Joe Walsh. I work for the Rainbow Project, and I'm talking to the fabulous sexual health officer in the Rainbow Project, Leo Lardy, and we're talking about trans mental health. So we're going to explore some language here that may be slightly offensive because it's from the old days, my generation. I just wanted to talk about terminology, Leo. In my day, well, we have transsexual, transgender, cisgender, which is someone who is born not trans, basically.
Yeah.
In my day, they used to just say trans or normal.
Yeah, right.
And it was just offensive. So that's why we have cisgender. And we also have non-binary now.
Yeah.
But transvestite is a term that was maybe a bit confusing because it doesn't mean a transgender person. It can
Let me
Yep, go ahead.
Let me break it down for you. I'm so used to doing this in taxis in less than 5 minutes. Okay. So a cisgender person is someone who agrees with the gender they were assigned with at birth. Biological sex is much more complicated than what's between your legs, but our gender that we're assigned on with birth is largely based on our genitalia. So if you have a penis, you're assigned male at birth. If you have a vagina, you're assigned female at birth. And if you're a cisgender person, that means you agree with the gender you were assigned with at birth. Basically, cis means not trans. Transgender is someone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned with at birth. Some people can get a little bit fussy about having a word for cisgender. I often am in rooms with people where they'll say, I don't feel really comfortable being called cis. And I'm like, I don't really get that, because like Joe says, it's either you're trans or you're normal. So a word needs to there needs to be a word for the majority as well. Otherwise, the people who are not in that majority get othered and discriminated further. To help me kind of I think it's kind of beautiful, the term cis and trans, because they come from the Latin. So cis means to stay on the same side. Trans means to cross over in Latin. And if you're confused about what gender a person is when they're transgender, because sometimes when I say, oh, I'm a trans man, people automatically assume that means that I must be a woman, because I don't look like a woman. So people automatically assume that's what I'm going for, because they don't understand that trans people can look this wonderful. Trans is kind of an adjective, it's like fat, skinny, funny. So you're looking for the word that comes after trans to help you. So if it's trans man, that person is a man. If that person is trans woman, that person is a woman. So trans just tells you what type of man or woman they are. Non-binary is a huge umbrella term with many little identities falling underneath it. But basically, the general gist is non-binary is someone who does not wholly identify with male or female. So that means they can maybe partly feel male, partly feel female, maybe feel like that's a bit fluid. Maybe some days they feel more male, some days they feel more female, or it could be that they don't really feel they have a gender at all. There is a misunderstanding that, like, so if we were to say that men are on one side, women are on the other, non-binary is everyone in between, everyone who doesn't feel 100% male or female. Non-binary people would kind of take issue with that because they don't really feel that they are in between man and woman. They're something completely separate from man and woman. It is its own galaxy. It's not orbiting around men or women. So transsexual, it is, like Joe says, it's a little bit of a dated term, but there are some people in the community who still use it. Even people as young and youthful and gorgeous as myself use the term transsexual. And that is basically someone who has completed all of the transition that they'd like. So that's someone who maybe has had hormone replacement therapy, top surgery, bottom surgery, and anything in between. So someone who's transsexual is basically saying, I've transitioned. Not a lot of people use the term transsexual anymore because I think people don't like that it's got the word sexual in the title, and there's kind of a misunderstanding that maybe it's a fetish or it's perverted. It's not. It just means that you've changed your body. And there's also transvestite. And transvestite means someone who wears the clothes that are more associated with the different gender. And really, transvestite, you don't often hear people being called a female transvestite because, you know, women can wear men's clothes and there's really no one bats an eyelid. Transvestite is usually kept for people who are assigned male at birth but prefer wearing female clothes. So transvestite and crossdresser are kind of the same term. Someone who is a transvestite or a crossdresser may not be trans at all. They may not feel like a different gender than they were assigned with at birth. They might just enjoy expressing themselves through a different presentation. But there are, again, some transvestites and some crossdressers who are trans. So again, we're trying to show you how diverse this whole community is and how I could say, well, some people feel like that, some people disagree. It's a wonderful, diverse place. But yeah, generally the main terms that we use now are transgender and non-binary. I would, if someone refers to themselves as a transvestite or a crossdresser or a transsexual, then absolutely use that term to describe them. But I would very much dislike it if someone called me transsexual. That's not a term I'm comfortable with. So you just want to go with what someone's using to be correct and accurate.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you, Nigel, for the wee updates in the chat there. There's some descriptions of the meaning, literal meaning of trans, like transit and transport, demi and any alternatives, precious gem, vice, etc. So thanks for that. In terms of mental health, Leo, I want to talk a wee bit about body dysphoria and the effect that has. So as well as everything else that people have to deal with, depression, anxiety, social anxiety, then trans people also have body dysphoria.
So it's gender dysphoria, body dysphoria, yeah, because body dysphoria is its own separate thing. Gender dysphoria is a feeling of discomfort, of anxiety, of apprehension when your body doesn't match your expectations of what it should be like. So as a trans man, I want my body to look more like a man's body. So when I saw breasts, that would set off my gender dysphoria because men aren't typically meant to have breasts. Gender dysphoria can also be that kind of that apprehension, that anxiety, that discomfort that comes from other people's perceptions of you being misinformed. So someone knowing that people see you as a woman or see you as a man rather than the gender you actually are. But yeah, a gender dysphoria is a really such an incredibly difficult thing for a trans person to articulate. I mean, even amongst trans and non-binary people who I, would talk shop with many's a time, I don't think we've ever really managed to sum up how dreadful it can really be. It's really difficult. For me, my dysphoria, and I imagine this is quite true for a lot of people, you think that it would be something that you're aware of, that you'd be able to say, oh, I'm feeling terrible because I'm experiencing gender dysphoria. But so often those dots don't connect. And I'm sitting there going, why do I feel horrible? Why do I feel like I need to have a shower for like the 10th time a day? Why do I not want to look in the mirror? Like, why do I feel gross and horrible? And it would take me a while to figure out it's because I'm experiencing gender dysphoria. You often find, funny enough, that when people come out as trans or non-binary, or when they realize they're trans or non-binary, they actually start to experience more dysphoria. And that's not because, now that they figured out they're trans, they now get to have more dysphoria because they know what's wrong. I think it's more the fact that you can now identify what that feeling is. So often throughout my life, before I realized I was transgender, I experienced gender dysphoria, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was your garden variety depression. I thought it was anxiety. I thought it was self-esteem issues. I didn't know that why sometimes, like, a great example is anytime I had to go to a formal event, so like a prom, and I had to put the dress on and do the makeup and do the hair, I would be so excited to go out. I would be so excited to wear my dress and have a good time. And then I would be sitting in my dress, and all of a sudden it would be like a fog descended onto my brain. And it was like the lights went out in my head and in my heart, and I was just gone. I was just empty. And for so long, I would be like, what's wrong with me? Why do I shut down? Why do I become so miserable when I'm meant to be having a good time? Spoiler alert, it was gender dysphoria. I just didn't know it yet. I just wasn't able to say that's what that is that I'm experiencing. I just thought, depression. So yeah, gender dysphoria is hard to describe, and it's not a requirement to being transgender. There are transgender and non-binary people who don't feel gender dysphoria, and that doesn't make them any less trans. But it is something a lot of us experience, and it's a reason why many of us go after transition like hormones and surgery, because it is basically the cure to having gender dysphoria is getting gender affirming services.
Right.
If there's any trans people in the chat who want to try and explain how horrible dysphoria is, be my guest, because
Yes,
I'm running out.
it's an open forum here, so all of your contributions are very welcome, because the purpose of this is to educate ourselves and everyone here with all of our contributions. So yes, feel free to chip in. And I wanted to talk about another term which may be offensive. Two terms. One is born in the wrong body. That's
Okay.
offensive, and the other is part transitioning.
Right. Yeah. So I think the problem that people have with born in the wrong body, there are some trans people who will definitely say, I was born in the wrong body, and that is a-okay for them to say that. That's their experience and how they feel, and I'm not going to say any otherwise. But to me and to many other trans people, born in the wrong body it's not accurate. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like I was born in the wrong body. I think that the body I had made other people see a different gender than I actually was. I love my body. I mean, I know I've gone through hormones and top surgery now, but in all honesty, I love my body. And yeah, born in the wrong body, it's a really oversimplified way at looking at things, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit bizarre. I'm not born in the wrong body. I was born in exactly the right body I should have been. It's just that the way that we categorize gender based on biological sex, it's not accurate and it's not correct for a lot of people. And that's the issue, really. So I don't think people don't like born in the wrong body just because it doesn't feel accurate. What body were we meant to get born in? This is, reality. And I think it takes away the onus from cisgender people to treat, to have a more open conversation about what gender is. Like, it's not just what's between your legs. It's not just what your body looks like. It's, how you want to express yourself through clothes, through language, the pronouns you use, the name you have, maybe even the traits you have in your personality. So born in the wrong body is just too simplified. And again, a big problem with trans identity and trans discussions is this focus on the body. I think it's almost, the way I would kind of describe it is, it's almost like we are freaks at the freak show, and sometimes the way that people talk about our bodies make us sound like we're in the carnival. We're not in the carnival. We're not freaks. We're just, we were born in the right body. It was other people's expectations of what that body means for us that is the issue. And what was the other thing you said was a bit dated? Part transitioning?
Part transitioning, but we've got a wee comment here from someone in the audience, and they've just said about gender dysphoria is one of those things that's just non-stop in your brain until you get the treatment that you want. So that will maybe lead us on to transitioning and part transitioning.
Yeah, and I think Nigel's got it right in the head there. Something that I would really connect to the feeling of dysphoria is dissociation, that feeling of not being connected to your body, not feeling connected to your environment, feeling completely separate. It's, you dissociate from your body, you kind of, and that might be a survival tactic in some ways, that you kind of distance your brain from your body because that's what's giving you distress. But also, like Nigel said, it's almost like self-alienation, it's isolation. You feel like you cut, like it's almost like your brain cuts off parts of yourself so that it's easier for you to live and to survive. And I think that's actually really well done. So thank you, trans people and Nigel, for helping me get my words right. Yeah, part transitioning. So I get this all the time. When are you going, have you fully transitioned is usually what people say, or are you going to completely transition? And that kind of puts me on edge a little bit because, for me, I have fully transitioned because I have accessed all the transitional care that I would like to. Me, transgender people, as bizarre as it might seem for cisgender people listening or listening to our discussions, we can absolutely love the body we're in, and there can be some aspects of our body that really upset us, and there can be others that we really enjoy. Our transition is not about looking like a cis person or acting like a cis person. It's about getting what we want to feel comfortable. We're not trying to squeeze ourselves to fit into the box that you've created. We're creating our own box and enjoying what it is. So I'm on testosterone, and I have had top surgery. So I've had my teats yeeted, as the kids say. I've had my teats yeeted, and I have no intention whatsoever at all to get bottom or lower surgery. I have no issue with that. I don't really have a problem with being a guy that has a vagina. It does not impact my day to day. Nobody is going to see it except when I really want them to. But it has no impact on me. I love the body I'm in now that I have a flat chest and a more facial hair and a deeper voice. That's all I want. That's all I need. So for me, I have fully transitioned because I've transitioned as much as I'd like to. And I think that thing with part transitioning is quite upsetting to people because it's this idea again that trans people are not real until they look like a cis person. And I think, and people wonder what it might be like for someone who has not transitioned completely, like what issues that might bring up for us. And for me personally, it brings up absolutely zero issues whatsoever. There's no issue with me having a vagina at all. It's not something that gets in my day-to-day life very often. I think the funny thing is it upsets other people more, but that never really affects my life. In fact, it's kind of an early warning signal for people I shouldn't be around. If someone has an issue with me having a vagina, then maybe they're not going to be my friend, my partner, or my colleague or my worker. I'm not interested. So I don't think it really impacts us that way. It does add a little bit element of stress because, maybe when you're going to the changing rooms, you're worrying about if someone could tell if you have a penis or not. You might worry when you're going into your older age how you might be treated in like care home facilities, or, you know, even like Anne was talking about earlier, what would happen to me if I went to prison? Would that be a real risk and an issue for me? But those are things I can't control, and it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. And I am incredibly happy with the transition that I've chosen. I think what is very difficult for trans people is those of us who do want to access transition. So it's pretty common for a lot of trans guys to get hormones and top surgery. Lower surgery, even for trans women or even non-binary people, is a much more difficult thing. It is a much more invasive surgery. It takes a lot of recovery time, but most specifically right now, it costs a lot of money. And there are not a lot of ways in Northern Ireland for someone to get that surgery on the NHS as it stands right now. If I wanted to get lower surgery as a trans man, it could probably cost me like £25,000, I think was my last indication, because it's not just, hey, oh, you chop it, you make it, it's done. It's like a series of like 5 or 6 procedures, and they're all quite complicated and quite expensive. And that is the issue that's holding people back. It's the expensive thing. You have to get it on the NHS, you have to really prove you need it, which is a lot of jumping through hoops, trying to fit yourself into what someone expects for a trans person who wants lower surgery. And the money issue is awful. And I mean, I can only speak to experience of what it was like waiting for my hormones and my top surgery. You know, I waited 2 years for my hormones. I waited like 4 years for my top surgery. And the feeling, particularly when my top surgery was cancelled and I had to then make the choice to pay privately for it because I just couldn't wait. That year between having my top surgery cancelled and actually getting my top surgery, I disappeared, not just from social life, but from myself. I disappeared. Like I'm a really happy-go-lucky person. I'm really confident. I love a bit of crack. I always love being out in the open and hanging out. And that entire year, I just completely, I went to work and I came home and that was it. And I just had no energy, no enthusiasm, no pleasure, and just the level of hopelessness and despair that I experienced on a day-to-day basis, because it wasn't like I was sitting there going, when I get my surgery, all of my problems will be fixed. I'll never have an issue again. I was sitting there thinking, I hate this body I'm in. Everyone sees me as a woman, even when they didn't. I saw that in my brain, that everyone was looking at me and seeing a woman, which I didn't want. And I knew that there was this surgery that would literally cure me of this dysphoria I was feeling, and I couldn't get it, and I was waiting for years. And I will probably be dealing with the fallout of having poorly timed, inappropriate, and invasive healthcare for the rest of my life, because that's the feeling that causes. I think that's the feeling that causes a lot of issues, mental health problems for trans people. It's not necessarily the fact that we don't have the body that we want, or that people see us as the wrong gender than we actually are. It's the fact that we are suffering, we are in pain, and no one cares. No one cares.
Yes, as well as the physical side of things, there's no one looking out for mental health that goes alongside your journey there. So you
Yeah,
have to source that and pay for it yourself, or if you're lucky enough to know about the Rainbow Project, get some counselling there. But
it's sorry, it's a hard thing as well, because dysphoria is not something that can be counseled or therapized away. It cannot be. And that's a real that's a real difficulty that you have accessing mental health as a trans person, is that there's always this focus on trying to rid you and relieve you of gender dysphoria. You know, things like mindfulness and breathing and all this, you know, these great mental health practices, definitely useful, yeah. But I can't feel good about my body when I can't connect to my body. I can't do yoga and practice mindfulness when every time I have a quiet moment in my brain, my whole body just scans to the thing that I don't want there. There is no counseling that can solve gender dysphoria. Only gender affirming services like HRT or surgery can. And that's the problem, is that you are waiting for something that will fix you and getting sicker every day because it's just getting worse and worse. Yeah, that's really depressing. Let's go to the good question next. Sorry, trans people.
No worry, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
So let's see. So the other question was about counselling around that, and can some trans people be counselled to accept the gender that they were assigned at birth? So suppose for some people who don't want to go the full road of surgery, they may only need some specific counselling and maybe some hormones, just
Yeah,
because that's only the far that they want to go, and that's what will make them happy.
yeah. So I mean,
But it's not going to work for everyone.
no. So you've just got to be careful there, because not everybody who questions their gender is going to be transgender or non-binary. And absolutely, people should have a space to explore those feelings. And if that is you or someone you know, Rainbow Project offer amazing counseling that will not push you into any identity. We're there to support you, whatever your identity may be. And if people come to counseling being like, I think I might be trans, and leave going, actually, I think I'm just cis, we're happy. We don't like cry because we've lost one. It's that we want you to be happy in who you are. But yeah, I think there are.
Does that space exist, Leo, or has it ever existed where there was space at the start of someone's journey that they can explore that? Or
Well,
do you have
this
to
is.
figure it?
I'm going to be really honest and really real here, and talk a little bit about the trans healthcare that's available in Northern Ireland. So if you are transgender or non-binary, and you are wanting hormones or surgery or puberty blockers or whatever, really you would get signposted to COI, knowing our identity if you're under 18, and the gender identity clinic if you're over 18. I'll be honest with you, I really don't think those spaces have a lot of benefit for a young trans or non-binary person, or really many people questioning their gender. And my issue with that is those services are almost like a psychiatric assessment model. So you are getting assessed, whether there's a piece of paper in front of you or not, with everything you say and everything you do as to whether you fit into their box. So whenever I figured out I was trans, I wasn't 100% sure, even though I'm obviously very trans now. I was pretty scared about it. I really didn't want to be trans. I thought my life would be shit. I was wrong. That's the good news. And I thought, kind of misguidedly, that if I went to the gender identity clinic and said, I think I'm trans, but I'm not sure, that would be a really good thing for me to do. Because, right, that seems like it'd be their job, right? To help you figure out what you are, right?
Yeah, it seems like that.
But my experience was that within like maybe my fourth session, so like my fourth session with them, I think by my fourth session, I'd figured out not only was I transgender, but that I definitely wanted surgery and I definitely wanted hormones. There was no doubt in my mind after the fourth session. And for me, that held me back, something shocking. My 4 sessions of doubt, so my 4 hours of doubt and concern, which by the way are so normal to be for trans and non-binary people, were treated like a caveat for any time I would go to make progress. So we're talking like 2 years down the line when I was about to start hormones, I'd be like, I'm ready for hormones. Please give me them. They'd be like, well, when you came here, you weren't so certain, and so maybe you shouldn't go on them just yet. And like, I think even for people who are questioning their gender identity and want to explore that, I would say stay clear of gender affirming mainstream services like COI and GIC. I would say stick to somewhere that's LGBT specific and go through it yourself first, because that process is not, it's not a therapeutic space. It's a psychiatric assessment space.
It's for the people to make sure that they're not making mistakes, so nobody loses them in the future. It's not set up to help trans people.
The system is designed so that cis people don't accidentally transition. It's not there designed to support trans people. So even if you're going in there and you're confused and you're worried, from my experience as a trans person, the way in which they label and identify males, females, and everything in between is so, excuse my language, so fucking limiting. Like, I would be at that session and they would say, well, maybe you're not a trans man because you're very empathetic. You're very empathetic and you're very affectionate, and that's a very female trait. And I'm like, hang on, love, are you saying that men don't have feelings? And that's I know this sounds like I'm making this up and that I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I'm really not. It's not designed for people to explore. So, it's not healthy for people either. People who maybe are questioning their gender identity, but who are not trans. Like, let's say there's a cisgender woman who thinks that she's trans. She likes to have her hair short. She's quite masculine. She likes to wear shirts and trousers and, play football with the lads. If she goes in there, she might feel that there's only one way to be a woman, right? There's only one way to be a woman. And that if she doesn't feel like that, then obviously she must be trans. And that viewpoint is so limiting, not just for trans people, but for the cis people as well. It's a really stressful, intense environment. It really does feel like in the movies when you go to when they go to the mental hospital and it's so tragic and dramatic. It does feel like that. I would say, if you're questioning your identity, go to somewhere like Rainbow Project. Go to somewhere where they know their stuff and they're experts, and they'll listen to you and they'll be empathetic and kind, and they'll give you questions to help you process and understand yourself better. Because if you're going to somewhere like the GIC or COI, it's almost like they have a tick list, and that they want you to fit into these boxes so they can tell you what you are. And if you're trying to figure yourself out, I felt like I was trying to navigate a maze in the dark. And then every time I said something, I was like, okay, did that swing them to thinking I was trans or swing them to thinking I was cis? It was exhausting, mentally, physically, emotionally. I don't recommend it. If you're going,
so it sounds like trying to convince the parole board that you're ready to be released.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would definitely think that, yeah, they're overly clinical. That's absolutely what it is. They're overly clinical. And even someone who is really confident in their trans identity goes in there and feels that there's something wrong with them, that there's something shameful about who they are, that they are ill because they're trans. That's how it made me feel, at the very least. I would super recommend, if you're questioning your gender or someone you know is questioning gender, take them to somewhere like Rainbow Project, and if not, just mainstream counseling, because you want to go into a space that's not going to have a preconceived idea of what you are, or has to tick boxes to figure out what you're going through. I think somewhere that's more friendly, that's more open, that's more warm is a much better place to kind of figure that stuff out. Because if you are trans,
be around other trans people as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's 100% true. The best thing that I ever did for myself as a trans person was to meet other trans people. Not just because, you get to mates who get what you're going through and you can all have a laugh and a giggle about it, but because there would be people I would be talking to who I had absolutely nothing in common with, not anything in common with, whether it was how we dressed, the words we used to describe ourselves, or, where we came from, would be completely different people. And then they'd start talking about being trans and what that felt like and how it felt for them growing up. And I would just sit there and be like, how do they know exactly what I'm thinking? How have they managed to explain something that's been bubbling around in my brain and I haven't been able to put a word onto? It helped me figure out I was trans more than any counseling or going to the gender identity clinic ever could, because I heard it from people's mouths. And there was all these reasons that I thought I couldn't be trans. and maybe because I didn't always know, or because maybe I like a bit of makeup, or maybe I'm a bit camp. And I listened to these trans people, all different walks and types of people, and we all had this similar thing that just seems so unspoken. It also really helps to meet trans people, not just because it helps you figure out what's going on in your brain, but you pick up on the language. There's so much of this stuff that is like, you feel it, you know it, but you don't have the words to explain it yet. And meeting other trans people, you get these words, you get these terms, you get these phrases, and you're like, okay, I can now explain this to a therapist better. I can explain it to my parents better. I can explain it to my coworkers better. And it's just a better place to be, honestly. So if trans people are great, I mean, obviously, because I'm one, but trans people are really wonderful. And, I think there's some intrepidation about going to trans stuff if you're not sure. We know how shitty it is to be pushed into an identity that's not our own. We don't want to do it to you too. So yeah, I definitely recommend LGBT specific therapy. Honestly, the Rainbow Project are amazing. I'm not a counselor, but I know that they're so amazing. And also just, meeting other trans people, whether that's online or in real life, is really super handy for mental health.
Perfect. Leo, thank you so much. That's some hope there at the end. It's not all bad. There,
Not a lot.
so connecting with other trans people, and maybe some don't go on to some of the forums and seek out people like J.K. Rowling and try and debate. People on these forums are not there to be persuaded. So you're just going to come up against a brick wall of negativity. So it's better to stick with positive things when you're at that stage of your journey, especially if you're a bit, your mental health isn't great. So,
And I mean, something I always say to parents as well is there's always that fear that, like, what if it's a phase? What if it's a phase, right? What am I doing? But I always tell them, listen, if it's a phase, right? If it is a phase, all your kid has learned from you being supportive and understanding of that trans identity, whether it's long term or short term, is that you love them regardless of who they are. And that is a wonderful thing to learn, And I honestly find that parents who are supportive are more likely to have, if their kid, if it is just a phase, their kids are more likely to come out and say, actually, I think I'm just cis, or maybe I'm non-binary, maybe I don't want to transition. They'll be more willing to have that convo with you because, let's be honest, if your parents tell you you're not something, you're going to be that thing 100% harder, even if it's not true. And, those people that can say they can counsel or give therapy to make your kid the girl or boy they were meant to be, that's conversion therapy. That is just piling a load of shame, self-loathing, hatred, disgust. Yeah, they may not want to be trans after that, but they also may not want to be alive after that. So, you've got a choice here. A dead trans kid, or a live trans kid, or a dead cis kid. Oh my God, I can't do my words tonight. A dead cis kid or a live trans kid. That's it. Yeah. Okay.
yes. So thank you, Leo. That's very powerful. And yes, as Nigel said, there is great power in words. So compliment yourself. That's another thing that you can be doing. Because self-praise will build up your confidence. And instead of talking yourself down, because it's bad enough. So if anybody has any questions or would like to make a contribution, feel free to unmute your device and chip in or type something into the chat here. We're nearly done with all of the questions. I just had yep.
I was just going to jump in and say, like, I know that we've talked a lot about the bad things that can come from being transgender, that feeling of gender dysphoria and the real dire state of trans healthcare in Northern Ireland. But I want you to know that there is a bright and happy future for trans and non-binary people, full stop. People, like, they surveyed trans people after they accessed gender affirming services, and I think it was like 87% of them said that it vastly improved their health and well-being. I've had my top surgery now. I'm still, I have I've still got mental health problems. I'm always going to have mental health problems, but I don't have gender dysphoria anymore. And that is so bizarre to me, that I get to wake up every day and just, take each day as it comes and not have to worry about one remark or one feeling or thought just derailing my entire afternoon. There is hope, and you can live a healthy and happy life as a trans person. And a lot of the feelings that we have that are bad about being transgender, that trans people experience, it's very little to do with actually being trans and everything to do with how other people view us and treat us. These last couple of months have been really hard for trans people and non-binary people because of all the transphobic remarks in the news, on TV, on Twitter. It's really hard to get up every morning and see that people think that you're a freak, that you're disgusting, that you're deluding the youth, that you're doing all this crazy stuff. Very little of my problems have anything to do with me being trans. A lot of them have to do with how other people treat me as a trans person. But now that I have a community behind me, I have friends and family who are trans, I have wonderful colleagues and co-workers, and I've got this confidence in myself now. Nothing is impossible. I will, I'm back to being who I was meant to be. I think my period of my transition was so happy because I really truly got to find out who I was and what made me feel happy and what my place was in this world. But it was also very difficult because I had to deal with all that gender dysphoria as well. But now that that's over, I get to just be like a self-assured, confident, wise arse of a man, which is, as every woman will tell you, the best position to be in, really, right?
Absolutely. That's amazing, Leo. Thank you very much for sharing so much of your journey with us. And I hope that people will find that helpful. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in. If not, we have a short evaluation form. It's only 5 or 6 questions. We would really appreciate some feedback because it does help us make improvements for the future workshops like this. And I've just sent a wee link there. And anybody who has contacted me by email, I'll email it through for you as well. So we're taking any questions.
I have questions, but I will let others go first.
Sure, give us one and then we'll see if anyone else has one.
Yep.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Leo and Joe. I can see that Bren is in the chat there as well. Thank you all very much for the presentation. It was really good. I only have 2 questions. The first one that I have for anyone who can answer it. So absolutely, Leo, crack away. What's the simplest thing that can be done at home to help prevent things like early promotion of dysphoria and misidentification of what people think before they successfully identify themselves as trans? What can be done at home? What's the easiest, simplest thing that can be done at home?
That's a really good question. That's such a good question. I think firstly and foremostly, it's about trying to challenge your gender biases. Like, we like to think, like I say, that we're past gender and that, boys and girls are treated the same, but they're absolutely not. So a really good way of making sure that you're affirming all of your children, not just your trans children, is to allow them to have all the opportunities that anyone of any gender can have. So allowing boys to play with dollies if they want to, boys to play with dress up, girls to play football. It's minding your language early on, avoiding saying things like, that's for boys, that's not very ladylike, that's not what a princess would do, or, I need a strong, tough man. You need to try and get rid of those gender biases you have. Easier said than done. I have a 3-year-old nephew and I have a really hard time giving him anything other than boy toys. And, I catch myself on saying things like, "Oh, be a wee man up," and you're like, "Who am I? What has happened?" So something that's really good to do is just to try and be non-gendered in your approach. And it's important to mention with dysphoria as well that it becomes so much more manageable if there's someone in your corner affirming your gender. I think it's important I mention now, everyone always hears about gender dysphoria. We never talk about gender euphoria. So gender euphoria is that feeling of absolute elation, of euphoria, of bliss, of happiness when your gender is affirmed. So the first time I got a man's shirt, I felt could have walked on Mars. I was so happy. Whenever my boyfriend called me, a gross wee boy or a man, I'd be like, oh, fantastic. When my mum sends me Christmas cards that say coolest son, brilliant. So there is a way to counteract gender dysphoria, and that's by pumping someone up. And something I do with some of the trans kids that I see is, I really do go all in with the gender terms. Like I'm right wee dude, how you doing, lad? Oh, he's a proper wee boy, this one. It sounds so daft, but it's like the little things, especially when you're very early on in your transition, those little snatches where someone calls you sir instead of ma'am, or dude instead of princess. It's brilliant. But yeah, just maybe try and have a more open view of gender overall is a good thing. Maybe even discussing with other family members about it, because it's not often the parents, it's often the grandparents or the aunts or the uncles that are really pushing that kind of girls do this, boys do this thing. And it can be super uncomfortable to have those conversations and kind of tense, but it's worthwhile doing. And it definitely means that, your children, not even if they're trans or not, will have a much more diverse and open way in which they can express and be themselves, whatever that might be, whether it's boy, girl, something else entirely, or don't even care, Any other wee questions? Nigel, shoot on.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I like the answers as well. So what do you call having someone in your corner, and just awareness in general within the household is definitely going to be a major factor for cushioning that shock of, I don't think I am as I should be. And at least if the family is supportive and aware, it goes a long way.
It does. Okay. It really does.
All right. The second and last question that I have for you is, it's kind of a big aim. So awareness is where I see a lot of the issues happening with anything to do with understanding those who do identify as transgender. So here's the question: what is the best way to address awareness issues regarding trans?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. So I think it's about remembering the privilege that you have as cisgender people. People are always going to expect, people know what my take is going to be before I open my mouth, right? So if we're in a conversation and people start being transphobic, maybe they start talking about J.K. Rowling's latest essay about why trans women are dangerous. If I say, well, that's actually transphobic and wrong, people will probably be like, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, mate? But if my mum says, hang on, I actually think that's really rude. Like, isn't that awfully sexist to group a bunch of people together and just say that they're sexually perverse or they're dangerous? It's about challenging your friends and your family and your coworkers when they say transphobic stuff, and they will, and to put your oar in, put your 2 cents in when they're discussing it. Very often, my mum, because she's a grandmother, people assume that she's got an old-fashioned way of thinking, and she'll often talk about, when she was at work, the people in her lunch hall would be like, well, Joyce, what do you think about these transgendered peoples? Obviously expecting her to have like well, I don't know about this. And she's like, well, my son's trans. And the absolute shock of, you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was so embarrassed and intense. And she was like, well, why wouldn't you think I have a trans son? Like, they're just people like everybody else. I think it's just about sticking up and standing up as much as you can. And in terms of things you can do for trans people in your life, just be wary of the stuff that you're sharing. So often my cis friends will share articles that are transphobic and kind of put like a witty thing and be like, this is a terrible thing to say. And that's true, that it is a terrible thing to say. But the people that will see that will probably be their trans friends, who then have to deal with the fact that they're getting in there. Like, I can't go on Facebook some days because my feed is just filled with people reposting Daily Mail articles, reposting transphobic tweets, and it just becomes a horrible place for me. So there are ways to speak out which don't highlight the kind of negative press, and just, talking to people about it, and just, it doesn't have to be a lot. Just, being like, I think, somebody's saying like, oh, don't know about those trans women, all this. And they're like, well, trans women are more likely to be victims of violence than they are the perpetrators. And, they're women at the end of the day, and therefore they're kind of, a marginalized group within a marginalized group. And something that's also super, super handy, if you know someone who's trans and they're getting misgendered or dead named, correct people. So often, people don't correct others who misgender me or dead name me because they assume I'm going to do it and that it's this awkward conversation. But for me, it's almost like I've been shot through the heart. It's very embarrassing. It's very humiliating. At best, it's disappointing. And it makes my life so much easier when a mate just jumps in and goes, hey, it's hey. It doesn't have to be like, excuse me, sir, you're misgendering my friend. They literally don't even bother. They just go, it's hey. No, their pronouns are they. That's, yeah, okay. Or, and that's all you have to do. Just jump in, dive in until they're so sick of hearing you that they get the pronouns right in the first place. But yeah, definitely just use your voice and speak up for trans people, because there's not enough of us to speak up for ourselves. And doing so often puts us at risk of harassment and discrimination, particularly online. So yeah, speaking up, that's what you can do. Yeah, so definitely just like Rainbow Project on Facebook, like Transgender and I, like Trans Pride Ireland. Keep an eye out for the articles they post, reshare them, give people your 2 cents, have conversations with people. It's really important that we kind of try to stop all of this, the transphobic bile that's just coming out. And some of it is just, all of it is pure nonsense. So yeah, just do that. I'm asking for the moon, but do that. Do that, love.
We've got a wee question from the audience. There's an older member in the family, very critical on everything and can be bitchy and bigoted. How do you come out to someone like that?
Oh, that is a really tough question.
Yeah.
Firstly, hang on, I'm gonna spit my gun out this one. Firstly, you got to go at the I'm assuming this is someone in the family is trans and you're asking, can they come out to her? Firstly, you got to go at the trans young person's speed, which can be awkward, intense, and weird, I know. But if they're not ready for that big conversation with a bigoted member of the family, they're not ready. I think that's a really hard question, but probably something that's really handy is SEAL NI, SEAL like a ship seal. They are a support group for parents and carers of transgender people. When I came out as transgender, surprisingly enough, my sister took it really badly. She thought that I'd been lying to her. She wasn't really sure about trans people. She thought it was a phase, even though I was 25 and past phases. And she called CLNI, and they really helped her to understand, because most of the people that run that helpline are parents and carers of trans people themselves, if not transgender themselves. They get what the feelings are, and they understand how to kind of listen and not dismiss those feelings of upset or discomfort or unease, to kind of accept them and encourage them and kind of, push them along the right way. I'm a bit older now. I'm a bit bitter. I'm a bit aged and can't be bothered. And sometimes when it comes to this stuff, I also have to be like, is it worth it? It depends, like some people are just never going to be nice. And if you've already tried to come out to this person, and they've been bitchy and mean and dismissive, you can go to them and be like, listen, they told you that they're trans. They told you they want to be called by this pronoun. They told you that they want to be going by this name. You have an opportunity here to do exactly what they say and support them, whether it's with your fingers crossed behind your back or not. If you don't do this now, you can say goodbye to seeing this person. And that sounds really harsh, and that is like, end of days thing to do, but sometimes it's what needs doing. If I was an adult and I had a family member who didn't appreciate or approve of my transgenderness, I would be devastated. I would be heartbroken. But I also know that my happiness, my mental health, my life comes before anybody else's water boundaries and beliefs and opinions. And I would measure up whether that relationship was worth the pain. So Seal and I get them to talk to somebody, give them an ultimatum. They have to get on board or not see them again, essentially. I know that sounds drastic, but it's true. It's tense and it's awkward, but sometimes it's what's got to be done,
Brilliant. Thanks, Leo. And always go at the pace of the person who's trans, because it's their journey and they're coming out. So they need to feel like they're in control of that as well. So yes, toxic family members can be cut off if they need to be. Sadly, it doesn't always work out.
But I mean, it does sometimes. Like, I mean, Seal do amazing things, and I think time can make a difference. But also, if you're giving someone the ultimatum and being like, "Well, we're not going to see you unless you support and affirm them," they don't have that time to think about themselves. Time can make a difference as well. But yeah, sorry, Joe, I just started going again.
No, that's fine. Okay, that's us pretty much done, unless anyone has any more questions.
You can. I'm gonna type my email into the chat. It's worthwhile mentioning I'm not the only trans person at Rainbow. They all have 3-letter names, which is hilarious. But if you have a question about transgender issues, or maybe you have a son or a daughter or a child who's trans or non-binary and they need some help, maybe it's some counseling, maybe they need to get involved in some youth stuff or social support, you can get in contact with me and I'll book an appointment for them to get into our services. Sometimes a really big difference in getting trans young people involved and engaged in services is having somebody that they can actually relate to on the other end of the phone. And sometimes it's not so much the questions I ask, but the fact that I'm there that makes a huge difference. I'm not a counselor or a therapist by any means. I have nothing together like that. So if they send me something really intense, I might just have to say, come to counseling. But if you've got a small question or query, I'll do my best to answer it. And if I can't answer it, I will definitely try to find someone who can. So do give me an email if you need to.
Perfect. And for people who are watching this after the live event, I'm not sure if the chat comes up on their screen.
It does not.
So it is leo@rainbow-project.org, or you can email myself, joe@rainbow-project.org, or you can email info@rainbow-project.org.
You just direct messages on any social media page. That's the
yes, you'll find
throw
it.
it in there.
You don't have to
Joe and Leo.
We're here.
Joe and Leo, just before you sign off, there appears to be someone who was trying to get into contact with you there, but they have sent a direct message to me instead of you. Paul Finnegan, sorry about that. I know I'm a chatterbox, but I'm not one of the hosts for this meeting. I'll give you a few seconds to get sorted out, but just to let Joe and Leo know, if you want to go and unmute or send them a message instead. They appear to be looking to get a question towards you. All right?
Yeah, Leo, I've got 2 questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
My 11-year-old was here with me for the weekend, and I was showing him some Facebook memory pictures of Christmas time years ago when he was visiting Santa Claus. And he has said to me on a number of occasions that he doesn't like looking at old pictures of himself as a girl, which is fair enough. I understand that. But he said something to me at the weekend that I found hard to digest, and that was that she is dead. She doesn't exist anymore, and you have to see her as dead. And I said to him, well, I have a son, but my daughter didn't die, because I can't mourn the loss of a daughter as a death. It's just something that, for me, you know, I just can't put it into that kind of context.
That's really interesting, Paul, because that's actually very different from how a lot of parents view it. Most parents seem to view it as almost to death, and they do grieve over it. So it's almost like the roles are reversed there. I think, probably a way that's interesting. And I think that might also have something to do with, the age of it, the age of your child, and their language might not be as complicated and detailed as someone who's much older can be. I certainly would be of the belief that, the girl version of me, she's not dead, but she's gone. She was the one that helped me carry the torch until I was old enough and ugly enough and strong enough to go through this myself. So for me, I kind of view it as almost like she's my little sister in a way, like that she came before me and she made things easier for me and, did all the hard groundwork and went to school for me and everything. But yeah, I can see how that would be very distressing for you. I think it's just one of those complicated things, and that some people, especially the younger ones I talk to, the younger trans people I talk to, they do tend to have really dramatic, I don't want to say dramatic because it sounds like I'm being dismissive, but they do tend to have quite dramatic ways of talking about like pre being trans. And I think that's because they so desperately want there to be a separation. It's almost like they don't want any part in that part of them that used to be, a girl. And that could be part of dysphoria as well, that they just feel so uncomfortable with it that they're not even comfortable thinking about that it used to be something that was true. I think maybe as time goes on, maybe as they get older, they might view it differently. They also might not view it differently. I think it's just it's really hard with this stuff, and I would recommend talking to Seal again about this stuff, because I think for parents it's a completely different experience, and you really do need to get your own support and your own kind of way to get talked through those big issues, because at the end of the day, your 11-year-old is going through something that, me as a 25-year-old adult, I found incredibly difficult. Sometimes I'm incredibly grateful that I didn't realize I was trans sooner, because it must be so difficult to go through something that is so hard to describe. And I think that they're using this dramatic language just so how serious they are about it, and how maybe that's them communicating to you how uncomfortable the idea of them being seen as female makes them. So I get where you're coming from, and I can get why that's so distressing. But just remember, it's probably the only language that they have right now to describe what they're feeling.
Here's a bit of an odd one. I'm on TikTok.
Right.
And there is a transgender woman in England who's about 21, goes on does lives, and has about 3,000 people in the room, which is a humongous amount of people.
Yeah.
But the thing that she does is that you can do a dual live, so people come in.
Yeah, and they
usually
chat.
It's usually people from Turkey or abroad, and she starts talking to them and saying, "Hi, I'm 21, I'm England, I love you, can we meet?" And they're chatting away, either a group of men or a couple of people, and then she comes out with the Rambo deep voice.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And shocks them as a bit of a joke, and makes TikToks out of it. Now, it's really funny, but I'm trying not to look at the negative side of this and saying, is she playing or using the trans card, or is there any kind of negative? It's not really for me to say, but and I've seen another YouTube clip of a trans person at a bus stop, and somebody having a go at them, saying, "You're not really a woman," and he's trying to be polite, and next thing he loses it and grabs them with a really deep voice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, although it's funny, it kind of like just doesn't sit comfortably with me.
Yeah, I do get where you're coming from, and I think and I'm a trans man, so I can't always speak for trans women, but what I will say as someone who has done stand-up comedy and often talks about being trans in their comedy, is that comedy is how we express and cope with really, like, we need a laugh to get a release and to get relief. And as a trans man, I experience probably like not even a tenth of the kind of bull crap that trans women and trans feminine people go through, because I can quite easily disappear into a crowd. Like, people really don't pay attention to me. But if you're a trans woman, you can be very visible as someone who was not always the gender you were assigned with at birth. And trans women know this. And I think, that humor, that kind of, that thing where they switch voices, or they change personas almost, it's a way for them to kind of like accept that exists for them. Because for trans women, they are generally training their voice so that it's higher. It's not something that's gone from them. They're aware of the fact that they can do that, and maybe the fact that they can do that is a little bit distressing, it's a little bit annoying, but also it is kind of funny. And that's the thing about this trans stuff and trans comedy, and trans people having a laugh together, is that things that we find absolutely hilarious and funny are maybe to other people quite problematic. But again, we're the ones dealing with the discrimination and the harassment. We get to decide how we blow off steam. And you could absolutely, like, there's definitely people, trans women, who would argue that these jokes are not helpful and that they're perpetrating stereotypes. But at the end of the day, that is that person's lived experience. She has to put on that voice so people take her, as she is. And, when people are kind of, and then changing that voice to show people, that she is trans. I think that kind of joke is to say, like, listen, y'all see me as a woman, and if I told you I was trans, you wouldn't see me as a woman. But instead of doing that, she's kind of plying people in with the voice and the sultriness. And then when they're all paying attention, she changes her voice so that it's clearer that she's a trans woman. And in a way, kind of playing gotcha on the kind of horny people that are watching along, maybe, to be like, you thought you think that you're so cool and that you'd never be attracted to a trans woman. Well, I got you. And trans people, we kind of like that awkwardness. We kind of enjoy that kind of dark humor. So I think, it's sometimes I'd watch one and be like, oh, that's a bit spicy, that's maybe a bit problematic. But there's other days when I'm having a rubbish day, I'm kind of like, that's hilarious. There's some things that the trans members of staff at Rainbow can joke about when none of the cis colleagues are listening, because if anyone else heard us, it would be scandalous. But for us, it's a way we blow off steam. Like, if someone said to me, oh, like, I would never ever want someone to say I was born in the wrong body, or I used to be a woman, or I was born a woman. But when I'm having a funny day, I just like, well, me, used to be a woman, I was born a woman, born in the wrong body. And I think we're all kind of playing up these silly things that cis people say and kind of having a laugh about it. Because if we didn't, we'd go insane. Then we'd be going to prison more often, like Anne's worried about. We'd be in there and shot up. So yeah, I think it's meant, like, it's good comedy in that way, because it's like, it's okay, but it's not okay. Like, it's that dark, edgy humor that a lot of us have. And a lot of the trans women I would be friends with, maybe it's because I'm a terrible person who enjoys a bad joke, but a lot of the trans women I would know would be quite similar to that. So yeah, just, that's just trans humor, baby.
Thanks a lot.
I think I know what Paul's talking about. I seen that clip. It was partially to do with humor, but it was also to do with a tolerance test to see how people would react. And it would have worked out a lot less dramatic if people had just said, okay, instead of saying their mind.
Right, totally. I think, sometimes we like to catch people out in the act of being like, it's awful to have someone be transphobic to you, but if you're a trans woman who's constantly receiving transphobic abuse, online, in real life, when you're going to the shop, when you're going to the doctor, it's quite fun for us to see a list of people and be like, what a bunch of assholes. Like, it's nice to catch them out on it sometimes. because people love to pretend that they're inclusive and welcoming and friendly, and they don't care what you are, just don't shove it in my face. But the moment they're attracted to you, oh, you're terrible, you're the one that's got the problem. No, honey, you're the one with the problem. You're the one that's so desperate for something that you don't like. Yeah, exactly. It's like the lady doth protest too much, you know what I mean?
At least with videos like that, at least we knew that they were safe, because
right, exactly. And that's the tea. I do love seeing trans women do it on stand-up stage though, because that's really funny. I love seeing people get we spend so much of our life catering to cis people. Like, even if someone misgendered me, I would usually have to comfort them to be like, oh, it's okay, I know you don't mean it, it's all right. Sometimes it's nice just to be like, to catch them out and to laugh at them and enjoy that awkwardness, because we never get to. We always have to be like, oh no, it's fine, it's okay. It's nice to actually see cis people sweat every now and then, see them feel uncomfortable, the way they make us feel uncomfortable. That's a win as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, any more questions? Well, that was a fantastic interactive workshop. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along, and thank you for agreeing to allow us to record. I'm just going to stop the recording.